Welcome, Owl fans, to another edition of Inside the Burrow. Tonight, it's just Jack and I. Dan is busy on the road, but we have a big episode for you guys tonight. We didn't have a game this weekend. We will discuss some of the things kind of around that game and, preview Georgia Southern with McClain Baxley, who we had earlier on this year, making his second appearance. But Jack, as someone who knows Conference USA really well, and especially these times of year, I don't want to be accusatory. These things are crazy. And someone who was very involved in the reporting on everything that was happening that day, Saturday. We saw, there was rumors with trainers and quarterbacks and certain player, wink, wink. I'm going to ask you straight up. Do you feel the conference should have done more to make this MTSU game happen?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, coming out of the gates hot.
Yeah, right. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. For FAU, maybe. But I feel like the Conference USA should have done a better job handling COVID-19 with its programs since week one, and they haven't. So it's kind of run-of-the-mill, kind of what they've been doing. That being said, I'm not surprised that CUSA, or as Louisiana Tech fans and now UTSA fans call it, CUAB, that they've maybe forced Middle Tennessee to schedule UAB so UAB could get that extra game so they become eligible to represent the West and play Marshall. That's some drama right there. And that's what just doesn't make any sense to me about all of this, is that Middle Tennessee was solved a couple weeks ago. They play us. We're literally waiting to leave campus. The boys have been on the bus for a good amount of time, just waiting for Middle Tennessee to say, yep, come on up. The plane is ready at Palm Beach International Airport, waiting for the team to get there. And then, they're just waiting on a few test results to see if they're going to play or not. But then 2 days later, after they decide not to play, they're going to be okay to play an interdivision game. It just doesn't add up, and it makes me think that the USA was pulling the strings at one way to favor one team, but not to favor another.
Yeah, there's there's nothing uniform about this. They've handled it before. I think Conference USA has probably had the most games canceled, especially Conference USA West, where it seems like there's game a week out there. UTSA has actually been fortunate to be able to get most of their games off, but it's just, I feel like I haven't seen UAB play or Louisiana Tech play in weeks. It's been insane. They're just forcing square peg in a round hole. That's what this season is. Just get it in. We don't care what the standings look like. Can FAU win Conference USA East this year? Mathematically, they still can. Mathematically, right? If Marshall loses 2 games, right? But the real answer to that question is probably not, right? But still, that stuff matters. And, there's TV money. There's getting this games out here. And I like to think, to me, there's honestly also, there's not much that could have been done. I saw some fans on Twitter who I was kind of going back and forth with saying, we'll force them to take a loss. Who cares? What is like Middle Tennessee in a loss season anyways? You give them 1 loss in a record book. It means nothing. They go, okay, it doesn't affect any coaches' jobs. Everyone knows no one's going to pay attention to it in COVID. It's not punishment anyway. But you know what is punishment? Middle Tennessee possibly having to go play 3 hours versus FAU's defense without Astro Hair, right? Like nobody wants to do that. So I think, that's ultimately what it came down to. FAU is ready to play without most of their running backs. What do you want to credit? It was
Reese from the Palm Beach Post.
Okay, thank you. He did say that James Charles would have been able to play, so we would have had one of our regular backs. FAU probably had enough to scrape by and score 2-3 touchdowns and win that game that day, especially if they had no Astro Hair. But it's just it just felt like all very kind of Bush League and unorganized. And that's essentially what Conference USA is a lot of times with a lot of things they do leadership wise and decision making. But, switching off of Conference USA a little bit here, we'll make a quick transition. We have a big out of conference game this weekend.
Yeah, I mean we're playing football, and if we got to go out of Conference USA to do it, then that's what we got to do. There was some talk that this game might be postponed, and so we could make up the game against Middle Tennessee this weekend. I didn't see that happening. Now again, it seems like Middle Tennessee can play, shocking, whatever. But we got Georgia Southern this weekend, and it's interesting because. Remember when we had that podcast several months ago in September, and we're talking about how good of a program Georgia Southern is and how they're going to be competing for the Sun Belt. Things haven't really gone their way, but they're still dangerous. Well, that's kind of been the Sun Belt in general. Like who the hell saw Coastal Carolina coming out of nowhere? They're projected to finish like second to last or last in that conference, and now you see them ranked in the college.
Well, you know what matters. And I tweeted this stats. It was, I believe, Charles Power of 247 Sports found it. And this was a couple weeks ago, so this isn't up-to-date data. Coastal Carolina, very weirdly, is a team that finished all their spring practices. Big deal. Teams that finished more than 7 of their spring practices going into a couple weeks ago are 48-18. So, that's why you kind of have, practicing is important in football, especially in spring. But with Georgia Southern, they're a team. They're good. They're 6-4. They've lost a lot of close games. They lost a 1-point game to a good Army team. They have run into some trouble the past few weeks. Couple opt-outs. Some players get in trouble. It seems like they just fired the offensive coordinator. It seems like the wheels are coming off a little bit in a good season. But in the end, they're a triple option. They haven't lost as mentioned later in the podcast, a home out of conference game in like 16 years. They're 26 in a row.
Yeah.
And let's just be straight up. We don't match up well at all with them. I think defensively we'll be fine, but they're 12th in the country against the run.
I will say this. I think that our run defense has been solid.
Okay, that's fine. But I have more faith in Shai Wertz to make a few plays at home than Javion Posey right now. I'm going to throw out a stat. Javion Posey has to throw for more than 250 yards for us to win this game. Or Nick Tronti, whoever the quarterback. We have to be able to throw that. Their weakness is in the secondary. We have to be able to take advantage of it.
Absolutely. That's where we're going to have to find a way to attack them. That is their weakness, is their pass defense. But when it comes to the Eagles and them offensively, they're just going to run the ball. And they're going to run the ball similar how we would, out of the shotgun, out of the pistol, a lot of option sets, a lot of speed. It's a lot of fun to watch when it works, when they're not playing your team, basically. So Shai Wertz has been a bit banged up. McClain's going to be talking about him later on. A bit banged up, so he might see a different look offensively. I'm really curious how it's going to be because Wertz is one of the best quarterbacks in Sun Belt Conference history.
One of their top backs was recently injured, J.D. King, and they had another back who got in trouble off the field. So, they are dealing with some things, but, it just feels like one of those games where you can't get too far ahead and be like, oh, they have all these guys banged up. They're still a good program. They're at home. And again, I don't know about you, Jack, but what's the kind of faith in our ability to be able to attack their weakness? And that's what this game comes down to, because, a lot of fans against UMass got frustrated with the O-line and a bunch of guys being in the box. I mean, if you were frustrated against UMass, Georgia Southern's gonna, we're still not even sure which backs are playing yet. It was reported a couple players had COVID. If it was, I'm just throwing names out. Like if it was a couple of our top backs, that puts us even more at a disadvantage. So, guys like TJ Chase and Brandon Robinson are going to have big games.
And you know what, Shane, that's exactly what co-offense coordinator Coach Drew said today. That the receivers, especially the older guys like TJ, are really going to have good games. And that's something that they expect every week. And, they haven't really gotten that. It's going to be a cold weather game. Right now, the temperature 6 p.m. in Statesboro for Saturday is 49 degrees. It's going to plummet lower 40s. So we'll see. I think both teams are going to try and establish the run, and it's going to be hard considering how good both defenses are at stopping the run. So Let's get the Georgia Southern perspective then, because I mean, I feel like we don't know what's going to happen in this game. There are too many variables, which actually reminds me a lot of FAU going into the season. Everything at Georgia Southern's been going through the last week. So without further ado, Nation, welcome back, friend of the nest, McClain Baxley, representing the Savannah Morning News. McClain, long time no see, man. How you been?
Good. I mean, it's been a long, 2 or 3 months since I joined y'all back in September.
That's right. We had you on for what was supposed to be the first game. Before that was postponed. So it is good to see you again. But man, a lot has changed in Statesboro and obviously Boca Raton since then. But if you can, just give us a summary of the type of season the Eagles have had up there and a little glimpse of some of the recent changes that we've seen in Statesboro just this last week.
Yeah, so the Georgia Southern is 6-4. They are 4-3 in the Sun Belt, and so it's been an up and down year. They 8 of their games have been one-score games, and they've been on the winning side of 6 of those. So they're 6-2 in one-score games. They've had success on the ground. They've had a couple of games where Shy Wertz, quarterback, has thrown it. They've had a lot of success on defense. Raymond Johnson on defensive end, Rashad Bird at linebacker. They've been, captains. And they've been really good this year. And then you look at this past week, 2 weeks, November 21st, Georgia Southern played former head coach Jeff Monken, who used to coach Georgia Southern. He's the head coach at Army now. That game came down to a last second drive, and time just kind of got away from the Georgia Southern. Was Army laying on the ball, or they feel like they should have gotten a last second field goal. They didn't, and so then there was a layover in New Jersey for about 24 hours, and so the team did not return to Statesboro until late Sunday night. And then Monday, starting running back Wesley Kennedy and starting nose tackle CJ Wright were arrested on drug and weapon charges. And then Tuesday, 2 more players, Chris Harris Jr., linebacker, and Ephraim Kitchen, a safety, were also arrested on drug charges. All 4 were suspended. Earlier in that week, Raynard Ellis, the team's leading tackler at linebacker, he opted out for the season. And then Saturday, with a depleted team and down 5 starters, Georgia Southern had a 11-point lead at the start of the fourth quarter, and they lost it to their in-state rival Georgia State. So they lost that game 30-24 on Saturday. Sunday morning, Georgia Southern's head coach Chad Lunsford makes the announcement that he is relieving offense coordinator Bob DeBest of his duties and promoting tight ends coach Doug Roos to interim OC. And Roos was here in 2014 and 15 as the offense coordinator. So so that's how we got here. That's 10 games. That's 10 days in Georgia Southern, and it's been a lot going on. But that's the nature of the game.
I just want to say this: could you guys imagine having a 24-hour plane delay in Newark, New Jersey? My God, I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Yeah, I mean, they were able to. So they game.
That has to be the worst part of all of it.
Yeah, I mean, the game ends around 4:00 Saturday, and so they go to leave, and the plane doesn't work, and so they gotta stay in the airport, and then it keeps getting delayed. So like, screw it, we're gonna get a hotel. They check into a hotel like at 3:00, and everyone's starving, and so they order pizzas at some pizza place, and we're able to get pizza, and then they got Popeyes for lunch, and then they were finally able to make it home. So yeah, I mean, not the greatest start to Thanksgiving break for those guys.
It seemed like, in just talking about these last 10 days, that Georgia Southern, again, was a solid football team. I believe they're averaging 275 yards on the ground per game, just as you expect kind of triple option to do. They're, I believe, 13th in the country in run defense, which doesn't play great into FAU's hands this game. But it seems like everything's just kind of unraveling. And you even mentioned to me, we were talking before the pod, that veteran starting quarterback, Shay Wertz, he's having some injury issues, and he might not be a go this week.
Yeah, so Shy Wertz, this is his 4th year starting at quarterback. He's been the guy the past 3 or 4 years. No real question of another guy starting. against so last year in the season opener against LSU, he hurt his right throwing shoulder and was out a few games, getting surgery. And then against Army, he re-injured it and had to miss the last 2 drives of the game. And backup quarterback Justin Tomlin came in and closed that game out. And then again on Saturday, he was a game time decision on Saturday against Georgia State, and it was definitely hurting him all afternoon. He had to throw that the 44-yard pass, a completion, but as soon as that ball left his hands, he held his arm and jogged off the field and came back a few plays later. He's a fighter, he's a warrior, he's a captain, he's a leader, but he's definitely not full strength. He didn't practice Sunday. Coach Chad Lunsford and Coach Doug Roos, the offense coordinator, said that he's, they're kind of preparing Justin Tomlin to be the starter, but they're still optimistic that Shai will be back to health and be ready to go against FAU on Saturday. So he's not at full health. Last time I saw him on Saturday, but it's still gonna be a day-to-day kind of thing with Shai.
And and just so FAU fans know, Wirtz he holds the record for most rushing yards gained for a quarterback in Sun Belt Conference history. So the dude is a baller. And then, and let me know if I'm wrong, McClain, but is Tomlin more of a passing centric, more traditional style? He still has mobile, but he at least may be a better thrower than Wirtz is.
I think it's too early to tell. This season anyway. Because Wirtz did improve a lot in his passing game, and we've seen that throughout the year. And one game he had close to 200 yards passing in an option offense, which is unheard of. Whereas Tomlin, the past 2 games that he's kind of been thrown to the fire against Army, he was down by a point and had to go and have a 1-minute offense, and so we didn't get to see full potential there. Same thing with Georgia State. He's down touchdown with a minute and a half left and kind of just lobs it up, thinking he needs all those yards and a minute left and throws an interception. So that's one thing that Coach Lunsford, the head coach, talked about yesterday was that, or on Monday, he said that this is gonna be a good opportunity to see Tomlin in his full giving a full game, not when you're down by a score, not when you're tied game. It's a tied game on the road. This is gonna be at home. Starts, so it's gonna be a more comfortable thing. I think in years past, I think Tomlin has been the better thrower than Wirtz. He still is able to run it, but he's not as good as a runner as Shai, and I think it goes back to experience or whatnot. And then the third guy, Sam Kinderson, he's a true freshman quarterback. Came in on 2 plays against Georgia State this past week. We could see him, especially on some of those running plays. Those 2nd and 3 or 3rd and 2s that you're more comfortable. And because Kinderson they've already said that he's one of the most athletic guys on the team. He's definitely one of the quickest guys on the team. We could see him on Saturday as well. So between Tomlin, Kinderson, and Wirtz, they're each of them has their own skill set for sure. But I think you're correct that Tomlin is the better thrower overall.
Now, switching to the other side of the ball, FAU kind of similar this year is dependent on their running attack, especially with the young quarterback, Javion Posey. But it seems that, Georgia Southern, almost like we kind of talked about at the beginning of the year, that there was still a little bit of a weakness or worry about that secondary. Georgia State passed for a ton of yards on you guys, but the quarterback was well over 350 yards in that game. And with Georgia Southern's run defense so good, would you agree that FAU has to run the ball? Has to be able to pass the ball to have success moving the ball at Georgia Southern?
Definitely. Last time we talked, a few months ago, it was still a very young very, very young secondary. That's gotten a little bit better. Kendrick Duncan, he's a, preseason all Sun Belt guy. He was hurt the first few games and came back against Coastal Carolina. And since then, he's kind of been the quarterback on that defense, being able to kind of lock down better. And, he's had a few takeaways. But yeah, each game, Derek Cantine, he's pretty much a freshman. David Spalding, a lot of these guys have come out and have improved each week, but that still is the weakness. I think y'all said, it's top 15 rush defense. If you take out the Army game, going into the Army game, they were 8th in the nation in rushing defense. So it's gonna be very difficult to run on them because they see it every day in practice. There's only been the full season. There's only 1,300 yards they've allowed, rushing yards allowed this year. So it's the rushing defense is the defensive line, very experienced, can get in that backfield, a lot of tackles for loss. But yeah, that's that secondary is still a question mark and will be a question mark throughout the rest of the season for Georgia Southern.
Do you feel, even despite with the losses, the nose tackle and linebacker position and everything with Wirtz, I mean, just kind of a final question, not so much a prediction. Do you feel like too much has changed for Georgia Southern? Do you feel like they have enough to win this game?
I mean, I think so. I mean, because like I said, they came out and they were up 14-3 very quickly against Georgia State. And that's without. I mean, that's without everybody. I mean, except Wirtz. Wirtz was still pretty healthy at the beginning of the game, but I mean, everyone on defense that they're going to have on Saturday against Florida Atlantic is the same guys that you started the game. So they came out really strong. Bend don't break, and then eventually there in that fourth quarter, it finally did break. So I mean, if the offense can be able to pick up points, pick up yards, and keep the defense off the field, they'll be obviously more rested when that fourth quarter comes, because that's been the in 3 of their 4 losses, really in 4 of their 4 losses, that fourth quarter has been where they lost. They were a close game they were tied with Coastal going into the fourth quarter, and then Coastal scored twice to take the lead and obviously win the game. So I mean, every game's gone to the fourth quarter, except for the 41-0 victory against UMass. But yeah, I mean, they can keep the defense fresh and ready. I think it's also gonna be a big pride factor. They've lost 2 in a row. They haven't lost a home non-conference game, in 16 years or 14 years, 26 games. So I mean, there's a lot of pride in the Georgia Southern team, and for a lot of these guys on defense, especially, it's a lot of young guys on that, or a lot of older guys, on defensive line and a linebacker. So I mean, this is one of their last games in Georgia Southern uniform, one of the last games at home. And yeah, I mean, they're going to want to go off with 2 wins and at least a win on Saturday.
Well, thank you for joining us again on this. Hopefully we actually kick off this time. I have a much better feeling than we did last time. Yeah. And I'm glad this game was able to reschedule. I think despite everything with Georgia Southern, this would be kind of, if FAU was able to pull off a victory, kind of a nice one to have for Willie Taggart in his first season, going on the road and winning at a storied program like Georgia Southern.
For sure, yeah. I mean, Luncher talked about it after the Army game. He's like, that even though Georgia Southern, they're 6-4, they're not competing for a conference championship, they're not one of the best teams in the land. They still being Georgia Southern means something. He's like, just look at the way that Army celebrated, look at the way Louisiana celebrated. Beating Georgia Southern means something. So I mean, if FAU and Willie Taggart and the offense that's been pretty good this year is able to come in and get a win, I mean, I think it's gonna be a good game. I don't think it's gonna be a blowout in either team's favor. It's gonna be a 4-quarter game, like I've been used to. It's been challenging to write game stories when I'm having to wait until the last couple drives to see where the direction's going. But that makes it fun for fans.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, guys, just so you know, McClain's not lying when he's talking about like every game has been close. It's really just been one game that hasn't been close going into the fourth quarter. It's been a crazy year for Southern. So it'll definitely be a good one. McClain, real quick, if FAU fans want to reach out to you, and that's something that Shane and I have been doing all year. I mean, he's a really cool guy. If you guys want to give him a follow, where can Owl Nation go ahead and do that?
Yeah, so on Twitter, it's at McClain Baxley. That's McClainBaxley. And then on, our writings on SavannahNow.com, and that's the home of Savannah Morning News. Yeah, all through the week and all through game day, I'll tweet too much and tweet, links, stats, things you should know, quotes and stuff. So, I try to do my best for both, Georgia Southern fans and, the opponent's fans. So, so McClain on Twitter is the best way for sure.
All right, good stuff. Well, thanks for joining us today. And real quick, any prediction besides it being close? Because we know that's a given considering Southern's involved.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that Georgia Southern is going to be able to win solely because
get him out of here.
If they were in a similar spot a few years, I mean, very different, but in my opinion, from someone that's covered the team, in 2017 they were 0-9 going into Senior Day.
Crazy.
And they come into Senior Day and win 54-0. So 52-0 over South Alabama. So do I think a 52-0 win is in the future this weekend? No, but I think it's that pride and that the fans are coming out and it's gonna be a cold game and so I think Georgia Southern is gonna find a way to win, but even if it's by touchdown, which has become the norm.
Good stuff. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, so that was McClain. Such a cool dude. So I'll definitely give him a follow. That being said, another episode wrapped up of Inside the Burrow. Make sure you follow us at Inside the Burrow on Twitter. And of course, FU Owls Nest. We're going to have a lot of great coverage for this game up in Statesboro this Saturday. Some interesting basketball stuff going on as well. Recruiting with Shane, Ryan's midweek mashups. You always got stuff going on, guys. So make sure you give us a follow. And of course, when it comes to the podcast, we're on YouTube, Spotify, Google Play, obviously Apple Podcasts. Wherever you are, we're there too. So give us a listen. Tell your friends. It's a mitzvah, all right? Listen, Hanukkah's coming up. Spread the joy, okay? Christmas is around the corner. Spread it a little bit. Spread the gospel. We got a lot of good stuff. Always here for you guys. So thanks for joining. So on behalf of Shane, myself, Dan, who's on the road, drive safe, brother. Go Owls.